Okay, these are more quotes from the book, The Holy Grail of Wisdom Quotes by me, Pete Rogers. This is from a guy by the name of Bruce Charlton. He wrote a book called The Genius Famine, along with Edward Dutton. And the gist of the book is that there's a dramatic decrease in the number of geniuses relative to the number of people in the population because Western civilization has basically become kind of evil and collectivist, and it aggressively is hostile to genius-type people. Okay, so I've collected tons of stuff about how geniuses are developed because I wanted to become one, so I've studied it in some detail. Okay, and let's see what he has to say. He says, geniuses have an endogenous personality with innate high ability, inner motivation, and intuitive thinking. And I would say inner motivation, intuitive thinking means I trust myself. I don't really care what other people say too much. I'll listen, I'll study, maybe I can learn from them. But if somebody tells me, oh, well, the Harvard guy, said this or that, or Stanford guy. I trained at Harvard and Stanford. I know most of those guys over there are bullshitters. So that doesn't impress me at all. Okay, next he says, endogenous personalities are usually socially awkward at best. And there's a reason for that. The reason somebody's going to be socially awkward if they have a high IQ is because you run into the Hollingsworth gap. The Hollingsworth gap communication range is that if you have a greater than 30 IQ point difference in a given subject area, topic range, whatever, domain, the higher IQ person seems odd or strange to the lower IQ person in that domain. And to the higher IQ person, the other person might seem dull. So, they get sick and tired of being called Asperger or autistic and stuff. So they just tend to be socially a bit of a loner, okay? And also, when somebody's smarter, like somebody's a better athlete. I was a great athlete in high school, and people really liked me for being a great athlete. And then I sort of became an academic genius, and a lot of people don't like me. They literally are nasty to me because of it. They're passive-aggressive and resentful. So it's kind of weird that it pushes you towards being a little bit of a quiet loner. Like I got doctor friends I know with IQs in the range of about 135. And they'll find me offensive and they'll be massive and passive aggressive to me. If they ever try to argue with me, I can kick the crap out of them intellectually. But I've learned from experience, it's just not worth it to talk to them. Okay, he stays focused on a problem longer than most men. Yeah, and I think where that comes from is basically, if you want to solve a complex problem like what causes diabetes, what causes hypertension, how do you improve blood flow, you need to read and think about it for months on end. So you have to be absorbed in that idea. You can't be, checking your email and your cell phone every 5 seconds, sending a text to your girlfriend every 5 seconds. You need to concentrate. And I spent a lot of my life very lonely, and I didn't want it to be that way. I got sent far away to Stanford for college. I didn't know anybody. I was just there in my dorm room, and Stanford is like the most boring college in the world. The women are all ugly. 9 out of 10 California girls are pretty, and the 10th one goes to Stanford. Not all of them, but most of them. And there's no social activity. It's out like in a cornfield, and so there's no bars, there's no parties, there's nothing. So if you don't know anybody, you're alone. All right, well, anyways, when you're alone, that's a common thing in the childhood of geniuses. They got time to really study because there's nothing else to do. And my med school was in a ghetto. It was a terrible neighborhood, so there was nothing else to do. Again, a lot of time to study. Okay, like I said, when I was in college, I never had a girlfriend at Stanford in 4 years. And I was captain of the wrestling team, student athlete of the year, A+ student. Whereas I go to talk to my buddies in state schools, they're telling me about having sex with 2 different girls on a weekend. Okay, it's quite a different environment. Okay, he stays focused on a problem longer. For him, solving the problem is an end in itself. It is what he most wants to do. Okay, yeah, you have to be enthusiastic about the material because a lot of guys, they're smart. I know a lot of girls are real smart, and they just want to get a good grade so they can get the job, be competent at the job, make their money, go home, spend time with their family. And that's fine. That's great. That's a good life. But if you want to solve really complex problems, then you've got to spend more time reading and thinking. Okay, the highly able endogenous personality is the archetypal genius. And by endogenous personality means it comes from within. They study something in detail because they want to learn it for their own self. They're not going to make any money. Nobody's paying them to do it. Nobody's making them do it. They just want to. The creator of original innovations that are vital to civilization itself, the archetypal genius. We have a genius famine in the West, partly because intelligence is in decline in the West. Yeah, people are becoming stupider. Their IQs are going down. Their IQs are dropping because they put F- and AL in the tap water. That makes people stupid because women don't want to breastfeed their babies anymore, so they're only breastfeeding 3 months or less, and that lowers IQ. And then there's more poison. The poor kid's eating this baby formula. It's got soy in there, which is toxic, probably processed with hexane. He's got an aluminum lining on the can, a BPA lining that's neurotoxic, mitochondrial toxic. So young children are exposed to tons of neurotoxins, and they're getting stupider and stupider. And then all this social media, this Twitter BS about, short and these email and these things buzzing all the time on their cell phones. It constantly is distracting them, pulling their attention away. And I made a whole book about processed food, mood, and IQ, about how the processed food and the SAD diet, standard American diet, all these things lower IQ. So there's no doubt about it. People are becoming stupider. The Flynn effect is BS, okay? Let's see what's next. Partly because social institutions no longer recognize or nurture genius, and partly because the modern West is actively hostile to genius. And I'll tell you, it is hostile to genius. One of the things I said before is I'm half Puerto Rican. I'm probably the smartest minority doctor in the entire world. I'm not aware of a better one. If you can find one, let me know. I'll see what they have to say. But what I'm trying to say is no one ever wants to talk to me. How come if all these so-called minority-favoring institutions care about minorities or want to give good role models for minorities, how come no one ever talks to me? And I'll tell you why. Because they don't like a real genius, okay? They want all these mediocre, pathetic types who they can control very easily. I can remember from my med school, they didn't want me to come back and teach the students. They will have some guy who was on academic probation for 4 years, barely graduated from med school, and they'll have him come back and talk to the minority students. They don't want me to come back, okay? I've learned that in medicine. They're hostile to you, and they're hostile to you because a genius looks at the conventional way of doing things and says, this is nonsense. I can do it better. Here's how you do it better. They find that offensive, and it's not necessarily profitable, so they're like, shut up. And the same thing like with the minority student programs at University of Illinois. I offer to come back and teach their students. They don't want me to come back. Okay, I would help their students to improve their grades. No. They want the students to do poorly. Then they can say, look, our students are doing poorly. It's because of racism. We need more money. Give us more money. It's bullshit. Okay, we have a genius famine, and it is hostile. I can tell you medicine is overtly hostile to me because I tell the truth, and I can tell you that conventional medicine is, for the most part, and for chronic disease, it's a joke. It's just for selling drugs, okay? So they don't want someone like a real smart person to come along and tell the truth and clarify it. That's not good for business, okay? So the West is hostile to genius. If you're a genius, you get ostracized, you get harassed, you get all this nasty behavior. Look at McDougal. They hated the guy, okay? Anyways, the average PhD student in education has an IQ of about 117. Average PhD student in physics has an IQ of about 130. The brain of a genius is differently wired from a normal brain. It is more specialized. Some circuits in other people that are used for social intelligence and for reproductive success are co-opted to serve a creative purpose. And that kind of reminds me of the funny joke that, the higher a woman's academic IQ, the lower her biologic IQ, the more likely she is to not have children. Because I know a lot of smart female doctors, and they're kind of pretty too. They don't have a husband. They don't have any kids. And they're in their pushing 50, almost 50, or in their 50s. They're never going to have any kids. They're never going to have a husband, probably. It's like they forgot to, find a mate and start making babies. And they're so pressured by their academics. And I dated one girl, and she's always wanting to wait. No, I can't have a baby yet because I got to get this fellowship. I got to do this. And I'm like, see you later. That's why I broke up with her. I can't wait forever. The brain of a genius, let's see what else. He says, this is why personality and intelligence go together in a genius. Something deep within the genius makes him want to fully comprehend, to improve, or to express the nature of reality. Pursuing this quest is the destiny of the genius. It is what he is meant to do. Yeah, and I told you that story about my kid. My kid goes, Dad, why are you so happy? Out of all the people in the family, you're the happiest person, but you have the worst life. All you do is work at the hospital, then come home and write books and make YouTube videos. Your life sucks. I would hate to have a life like you. Why are you so happy? I'm happy because this is what I was meant to do. I'm fulfilling my destiny. Like Watson said, happiness comes when an animal does what it's designed to do. A horse is happy when it runs. So a genius is happy when they're studying or teaching or writing. Okay, it's just how it works. Because also, like my wife said to me, she's like, why the F do you spend so much time with these stupid books and your stupid YouTube channel? You could double your salary if you took a job at this hospital. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, so you could divorce me and I got to pay you double alimony. I think I'll keep my hobbies. Thank you very little. Okay, Newton's intellectual ability, his intelligence was obviously stratospheric. Newton, as a child and a young man of science, would spend nearly all of his time alone. Yeah, his mother abandoned him. She abandoned him and ran off with another man, okay, when his father died, okay? Newton didn't have it so good. When Newton was asked how he made his discoveries, he said, by thinking on it continually. I keep the subject constantly before me. Einstein said about the same thing. Carl Jung had a long-term live-in mistress who functioned as a second wife. Only an inner-orientated personality can be sufficiently independent of social consensus as to be able to change the social consensus. So that's what I said too. Carl Jung, I also read his work and thought he was smart, but not necessarily a genius. But any guy that could get a live-in mistress and have his wife be okay with it, and he's got a bunch of kids, he's a genius. Okay, Charles Murray wrote his book, Human Accomplishment, all about summarizing who had created the greatest accomplishments in, let's say, classical music and painting and other things. And he came to the conclusion that the overwhelming majority was produced by Christians, okay, and Christians especially from European and mostly men. And people get offended by that, but the reality is women up through until 1900 and really to the late 1900s, well, up till 1900, they were having an average of 10 babies, okay? If you're having 10 babies and breastfeeding all of them, it's going to be hard for you to sit down all day by yourself and work on an academic task. Because usually, genius level scientists and composers and writers, they spend a tremendous amount of time alone just doing their work. So having a bunch of kids and nursing them is going to make it hard to do these things. Plus also, I think there's something different in the personality of women than men. Everybody tries to bullshit and pretend women and men are the same, but they're not. Men are much less social than women are. All the stuff about men and women being alike is not at all true. I can tell you from the women I've known in my life, everybody knows their mother is different than their father. Their sister is different than their brother. And I'll just tell you one quick story. I was giving a presentation, and I was dating my wife at that time, and I'm preparing to try to make my presentation real good. And she's like, why do you spend so much time on your presentation? Nobody gives a SHIT about your presentation. You're just a typical man always trying to show off and be a big shot. A woman doesn't care. A woman just wants to survive. Okay, so she thought it was idiotic that I would spend so much time preparing. For me, that was normal. And I also would say, if you look at my wife, she was an incredibly gorgeous woman. She was like a 10, perfect, incredibly beautiful. She can be a moron, a stupid idiot, and she could still attract a man. On the other hand, I'm just average looking guy, even a little short, only 5'9". Unless I excel at something, I'm not going to get laid, okay? I'm not going to reproduce. So a guy has to achieve to even just generate some status, because that's sort of what a man attracts a woman. The old joke is, why do men have jobs? So women will talk to them. Why do women have Virginia? So men will talk to them. Okay, it's a joke, but the point is the woman is intrinsically attractive. Men like women far more than women like men. The old dating app site story that women find about only 15% of the men attractive. Men find about 85% of the men attractive. And that must have been some other ones, because the ones I've gone to is not that many women are attractive. But be that as it may, in general, men like women a lot more than women like men. I know that I'm usually happy if there's just a woman in the room. I like talking to her. Even if she's totally ugly and I would never in a million years want anything to do with her, I still just like having women around. I just do. I like talking to women. I know lots of fat women who I would never have sex with, but I like them. I just like talking to them. I just like women, okay? I can't help it. We just do. Okay, whereas women, I think deep down, secretly, they find most men kind of disgusting and dirty and vulgar. They don't like us that much, okay? And I know how women talk about men when we're not around. We talk about them a lot nicer. We joke about them, but we like them. A lot of them, don't really like us that much. And especially, gosh, the feminists, they hate men. All right, well, anyways, I went off on a tangent there, but the point I'm making is valid. A man has to achieve something and generate some status, or he's not going to get laid. Okay, and I think nowadays the majority of guys aren't getting laid. Okay, it's not good. All right. So, anyways, he's more motivated in that sense, and there's also a status competition between men. There's more of a dominance hierarchy between men, and he has to achieve something if he wants to come out okay in that game. So men try harder. And, Jordan Peterson has talked about this when he worked with a bunch of lawyers. He said the male lawyers, they were quite perfectly willing to work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. Whereas a woman in her 30s, she's like, you know what, I got a biological clock. It's just not worth it for me to be working, 6-7 days a week, 12 hours a day. I want to have a family and I have to do it now. So they're just not going to do it. And I also dated a girl who was second in her medical school class. I was friends with a girl who was second in her medical school class. And I know another girl who was second in her medical school class pretty well. What I'm trying to say is all three of them never did anything. Zero. I did a residency program with a girl second in her medical school class. She had zero ambition. She had a baby. She just wanted to take care of her baby. She never said a word in conference. you would not even know that she was a good student. I mean, she was competent. She's a nice person, but she had zero ambitious interest in excelling amongst the crowd. I always had an attitude, I'm the best resident in this program. I'm probably one of the best residents, if not the best that ever trained in this place. I had a real attitude. Like, I went to Northwestern for residency, and I kind of didn't like Northwestern. It's like his kindergarten. It pissed me off. I belong at Harvard. I stayed at Northwestern because my mother had cancer and I wanted to help with her. But I was pissed off and wished I had gone to Harvard. And I sort of felt like it was kindergarten. It was lazy. I didn't like it. I had an attitude. I was stuck up. I wanted to achieve. I rocked the boat all the time, and I caught a lot of flack for that, but I didn't care. That enabled me to do some pretty impressive things when I was a resident. I wrote a couple books. I got a perfect score on my boards, done in 1 hour and 10 minutes on a 4.5-hour test, that sort of thing. And I traded all my time at the Rich Hospital. Get the hell out of here. I don't want to sit around back in the third row, can't see anything. I went to the poorest hospital where I could do advanced procedures. I was doing cerebral angiograms unassisted in the room when I was a second-year resident. Because I went to the poor hospital. At the poor hospital, they let you do a lot more stuff on all the poor people. So anyways, the man, in general, there's a few exceptions. Everybody can quote some exception, but they're rare, okay? If you look at, like, who are the most famous vegans? They're a bunch of guys, and they did the big work, There's Kempner, McDougall, Burkitt, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, yeah, there's exceptions, but in general, that's true. Men don't care. Men don't care if they don't get laid. They're willing to just be alone and work their butt off 7 days a week for year after year after year, or even decades. Whereas a woman, she wants to have a family, and then she wants to take care of her kids. And she cares about her kids a lot more than she cares about her husband or her career, typically. Okay, Charles Murray, basically felt that was where most of it comes from. Then also, why does so much achievement come out of Christianity? Because most of the great achievements come out of Christianity for the history of mankind. You take a look at it. Where's all the greatest painting? 99% of it. It comes from Christianity, and it comes from men. Okay, because Christianity inspires you to do something beautiful for mankind. Versus, I know tons of high IQ people from Asian countries and from other places. And what I know about most of them is they're real smart, they do well in school, and then they want to make money for themselves, for their family. Okay, they don't have this desire, because all the Asian religions are godless, so they don't have this desire to create something for mankind. They don't have a Bible-based worldview that says we're all in a cosmic struggle between good and evil, and we must do something for the sake of good, or that the universe creator is God and he's rational, and we can be a creator like God, and we can understand the universe because it's rational and because we're created in his image. Even though we can't understand it like him, we can still understand it. Also, in a lot of these other countries, non-Western countries with Christianity, property was not secure. You would invent something in a country with a dictatorship, and as soon as it was shown to be profitable, the dictator would just take it away from you. So you could never, ever become wealthy, so why try? Why try to discover anything when it's going to be taken away from you? Okay, but that's why science, the modern scientific method, comes from the Catholic Church, and that's why the greatest scientific achievements have come out of Christianity. That's why the greatest art comes out of Christianity, especially Catholicism. But the Protestants did some fantastic art, like in the 1800s, the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood, and the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood disciple students like Edmund Layton were magnificent. John Everett Millay, magnificent. Okay, so anyways, that's a big part of where achievement comes from. And that's also, if you look at the best literature, it all comes from Christianity. Because Christianity gets man's basic dilemma right. We got a limited amount of time on this earth. What are we going to do? And Christianity sort of says, aspire to the best. It motivates great achievement. It motivates great achievement in smart people. Because people can give me a contradictory statement on it. They can say, well, why is the average Christian stupid? And that's a fair statement. There's plenty of populations, non-Christian, where they have higher IQs than Christians. But I think for a smart Christian, it motivates you to be creative. It just does. And you've got this incredible tradition of painting, music, art, literature coming out of the Christian tradition. And you don't have it coming out of other cultures and traditions. You just don't. If you think you do, show it. Put it in the comments below. I'm happy to take a look. I've done that for years. And people show me a few things here and there, but not much. Okay, so anyways, that's a bit about the genius IQ. Basically, it comes from within. Arthur Schopenhauer has written a tremendous amount more about this, and a whole bunch of other people have as well. But, Charlton and Dutton, they had a few things to say. It comes from within. They have a goal in their mind. They pursue their goal. They don't really care about much else. They're already socially isolated anyways, quite typically. So they want to pursue their goal, and they end up creating something kind of beautiful. And they don't care so much about conformist, regular BS, because if they did, they wouldn't be able to achieve so much. So anyways, hope that was interesting.